Welcome to our new series, The Body's Truth, The Inside Story. In this series, we are discovering a remarkable sensing instrument that is the body. Our body senses what is true or untrue at multiple levels. It also brings together many experiences from the past and the present, and it is always sending you wise messages. These messages reveal a wisdom from the deep, deep sea inside you. But you can only listen to your body when you have patience, clarity, and courage. Then let's begin.
Join spiritual psychologist and India's #1 biofeedback practitioner, Ritu Malhotra, as she guides you through the paths of self-discovery and personal transformation so that you can live in alignment with your values and purpose. This podcast is brought to you by Ajna Center for Learning. To know more about Ajna and connecting with the host, check out the links given in show notes. You are listening to the Cellular Alchemist podcast, and here's your host, Ritu Malhotra.
Resolving the trauma of loss. Loss is tough for all of us. And it is no secret that the trauma of loss translates onto our body and in our biology. The emotions we feel at the time of losing something or someone are embedded in the body. They are inseparable from ourselves. And the most important point I want to make is that the stress we feel during a traumatic event affects the development of our body and our brain as well. As a child, we have no way of dealing with this stress. So the only coping mechanism is to tune out or to shut it out, to create a safe space in the head where you would rather be than where you are at the moment in that traumatic situation. I know this as a personal experience. When I began to notice that my attention was not focused and that I couldn't remember what I was reading, etc., I began to connect the dots for myself. And being a therapist, it was easier for me to dig deeper to find the cause of why my brain was always running away. Now, it's not important to recall exact times and precise events of the past, but the feelings that trauma causes are recorded in our implicit memory. For me, it was the unhappy life my mother was living. And an unhappy mother means that there's going to be a neglected child and a neglectful mother. And to every child, it means I am not wanted or I'm not loved. That is what a child is left with. So for me too, the absent-mindedness, the tuning out was not a brain problem. It was a response to stress and the inability of a small child to cope with it. We as kids don't have the strength to confront or fight back or even walk out of the door. So what do? We defend against the trauma by disassociating. We do just walk away actually, not physically, but mentally. We learn to adapt. we learn to adapt in this way to not suffer the pain of rejection or of being unloved or not being good enough. So the brain development is severely impacted because our brain, especially in early childhood, is creating connections and growing every second. It absorbs everything that is going on around it. And we hamper its progress through this trauma. And so, what could have been a temporary stress issue, most times, becomes a permanent habit. This tuning out or going into dreamland or la la land. For any child to develop as a healthy adult, the parent has to be emotionally present and available. For any child to develop as a healthy adult, the parent has to be emotionally present and available to be unstressed and happy with their role as a parent and their life in general. Where do you find parents like this, huh? I mean, I know it's difficult. But the sad truth is that this is where our need for attention begins. Even our narcissistic tendencies, like it's all about me, they are generated here. So when we see an adult behaving in a narcissistic manner, we know that their childhood need for care and attention was not filled. I can still remember holding on to my mum's sari and following her around the house until she gave me attention. And that is the reason, which I recognized much later in my life, of course, that when I'm saying something or asking for something and someone ignores me or doesn't think that it is necessary right then, I would get furiously angry. I mean, this much fire for something so small was unwarranted. But it wasn't the present me that was reacting, but the abandoned child that was crying out for attention. So this is old stuff, stuffed in the shelves of our memory. These behaviors are an acting out of that attachment relationships that are still unresolved. Now, as therapy gets a stronger foothold in our lives, we know, of course, that we can reprogram past hurts and pain. Mindful practice is getting very popular, and it's a good way to do that. So is some intimate work with a therapist, with any of the modules. There are many out there that works for you. Choose any of them, but do it. It's worth it because it holds the gift of the life that you want to live.
That was this week's episode for the Cellular Alchemist podcast with spiritual psychologist Ritu Malhotra. Don't forget to follow the podcast and join us next week for yet another episode.